everyone. So welcome to our last week. So this is for EDU 63627. And we're talking about behaviour management for our week 14. So I'll start off by asking, so what behaviour management issues do we all face on placement?
I was pretty lucky not to have that many behaviour management issues in either of my placements. The only thing I ever faced was like on my first teaching placement. One day my mentor left early because she had to pick up her child who was like really, really sick. And for some reason the school, I think, just forgot to assign a like relief teacher for that lesson. So I was in a lesson of year 8 at the end of the day alone with no relief teacher, and it was like my first teaching prac. So they were definitely like rowdy, and they were just doing whatever they wanted. And after that, I did feel very overwhelmed, and I was like, I wanted to like just cry because I was like, why aren't they listening? But the next like lesson, I talked to my mentor and I was like, what do I do? She was like, well, you talk to them and you tell them how that was unacceptable, and you kind of just lay it out for them. And that's what I did the next lesson. And it was a double, and I just told them how inappropriate it was. And just because their teacher wasn't in there or another teacher wasn't in there doesn't mean they can disrespect another teacher like that. And I just kind of basically laid out everything, and they were pretty quiet after that. They were like, yeah, okay, she's serious. So I think just having the expectations clear from the start, probably.
I had a student on my last placement who she was just really distracted. It was a maths class, and she was not very engaged in maths, and she didn't have a very high level of maths. She was definitely behind the rest of the class, and she also just didn't engage much at all anyway, even when she had work that was at her level. And that was really difficult. A lot of the times we tried a few different strategies to try and approach it, but it really was like very hard to actually get her to engage. No matter what we really tried and what kind of tasks we gave her, she just didn't really want to.
Yeah, I had one student. So this student was really like disrupted classroom. So every time I start teaching, he got lots to share with the others. So things happened the previous day or any funny story. So actually, I found out that this student was suspended from the previous school for bullying. So and also this student had a really low self-concept. So every time I give some work, he was like, "Oh, I'm not good at it. I can't do it." So one time I remember I was teaching a health unit, and I asked him to come up with a healthy meal plan for a day, and he just did a meal plan using dog food. So that's how he was. So yeah. So that was the only issue I faced during the placement.
I was taken on my third year placements, so specifically a year 8 maths class. They were known as a pretty hard class, and they were just crazy. And I was actually in there for observation, but one lesson I took them, a double lesson I took them for teaching, and the normal teacher wasn't there, so it was a relief teacher. And it was just a crazy classroom environment. They, probably 2 of them were on task, I think. Like, it was just a bit insane. Probably wasn't the best experience either. I felt very stressed out afterwards and had to go and like debrief to my mental teachers, and yeah, it wasn't the greatest. All right, so considering what we did on that placement with those behaviour issues, is anything that you might do differently next time? I might start with that and say that, with my behaviour issues that I face, I think I was definitely too nice to the kids, and that's why I got told a lot, and that I didn't stand my ground enough, and that's why I think actually, being a lot more assertive is probably the way to go for me.
Same with me. I'm too nice. Like, I feel bad when I tell kids off. Yeah. So I admire that, Shika, that you can like on your second day and just be like lay down the rules with the students.
I think it was just the fact that at the time when I was going through it, I felt like so powerless that I couldn't think of what to do. But then the next day I was like, well, you know what? It wasn't really my fault. It was that they just thought that they could. So I think what I did basically in my next placement was at the start of every lesson, first lesson for all of my classes, I was like, these are my class expectations. It's basically just respect and listening to everyone when they're talking. That includes me, and everyone has the right to learn and I have the right to teach. So just kind of setting that out so they know that those are my expectations. And if then I do call them out, they know that, okay, well, yeah, that makes sense. She said that this is what she expected and I wasn't doing that. So it's a bit reasonable, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same with me. So I wasn't like doing anything for like those types of behaviors. I was just trying to calm that student down. So one time I had to send the student out, and all of a sudden it was like, so Mr. K, he's serious. So after that day, actually, he was a little bit settled down. So as Shika said, I think setting your ground rules is very important. So that's what I'm going to be doing next time as well. So that's a start.
So I suppose like going on in the future then like I think what was hard for us as pre-service teachers is that we're going into a classroom that's already been set up by someone else that isn't us. And so I think just going in and having our own like set expectations is probably going to be a lot more helpful. Even just things like, if one kid's acting up, you can say, hey, this isn't our class rules that we decided. So is it true that the best teachers are those who demand and receive attention? What do we think about that?
Maybe the receive part is probably true. But the demand part, I don't think so, because a lot of teachers, I think all teachers demand attention, but not all of them tend to get it. So I guess it's just how you lay out your class, I guess. And sometimes students just don't want to listen. Like it's just one of those days. Like regardless of if you're their favorite teacher, it's just they're just having an off day, they won't listen.
Yeah. I think as well, if you're like demanding attention, even if you're getting the attention, it's not like a consensual thing. It's like you making the kids listen to you, so they're probably less likely to even take away a lot from that.
Okay, cool. So is it always clear cut what is on task and off task behaviour, and how would we determine this?
I remember when I was in school, there'd always be this incident where these two people were talking, and then the teacher would tell them off, like, why are you chatting? And then they'll be like, I was just helping her out with like this question. We weren't off task and stuff. So no, it's not always clear cut. And you also don't know if they're actually lying or telling the truth when it's like that. I think you just got to keep your ears peeled, and before you say anything, just try and listen in on the conversation before you tell them off. Yeah.
No, I agree, and I think that goes on to the next question as well. Like I do agree with Danny with the fact that you have to be aware of what's going on in your classroom to be like making those calls. So if students are like talking, but if you have a task which is like discussing things or brainstorming things, then obviously you're going to have a lot of talk, and you can obviously have like a cap to that and be like, all right guys, like above this I don't think is going to be positive like chatter, but like I think below this is good and stuff like that. But I think it's just being aware of your class and your students, knowing what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So what do we think that is there any like off task behaviour or like off task or unproductive behaviour that is acceptable?
I think sometimes in group work, it's good for students to have a bit of a banter between themselves. Like, I think that contributes to, positive learning environments, right? And students making closer relationships with other kids. As long as it isn't for the whole time they're doing the group, but yeah, I think that's okay.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like, even just like us just having a bit of banter with students sometimes, I think is pretty helpful.
Yeah.
I think also, as you were saying, Danny, as well, is that even just like kids aren't wanting to come in and like learn like every single day all the time, because that's just kind of unreasonable. But if they're sitting there and if they're not distracting other people, then I think that's still acceptable, you know.
Yeah, I also think
that. Sorry, Miles.
yeah, at times it can also be good, like someone was talking about it in the presentation today, but like even incentivizing students by saying like, oh, once you complete this task, you have free time to do what you want to do. So like they're not like, oh, this whole lesson I have to be on task the whole time. Like they know that if they actually spend that time on task, then they can do what they want afterwards.
And then I guess that's acceptable off-task behavior, because they're not technically on the task you're probably providing, but they still have done that. They've been productive for the time you've given them. So yeah, that's a good idea.
And it's like an agreed upon thing.
Mm-hmm. Right, so how would you guys rate yourself as communicators, and does this have anything to do with behaviour management? Yeah,
I think with my first placement, I think I felt very, not very, but like a bit disconnected to my students. But I think that was because of the way my mentor wanted me to teach. Like she sort of expected me to have a bit more like firmness in my teaching, which I was okay with. Like, but I would have liked to be more interactive with students and like have a bit more banter, which I was able to like sort of do in my next placement, because I had like really good relationships with my students, and they would come in and, you know, we would like sort of have a bit of a chat, like what happened on their weekend, and like I would try and like, you know more about them, which helped with teaching as well, because they enjoyed being in the class rather than just kind of being like, I don't know who this person is, I'm just here because I have to. So I think that does help with behavior management as well, because if your students know you and they know you're a reasonable person and they know, like, you know, you're nice or you're decent, a decent human being, you're not just gonna like be on their back for no reason, they'll most likely behave unless they have something going on.
Yeah, I would agree with that. All right, so we'll move on to the next question then. So does anyone want to share on how serious bullying was on your most recent prac? Did anyone experience that at all? Or any strategies that you might use to deal with that situation?
I think setting up the class culture is important. So letting them know that we should respect everyone in our classroom, things like that. So that way we can eliminate that within the classroom. And also, I like how in one of my classes at my recent placement, of course, they were discussing about like they have made some presentations to distribute among students about bullying. So they had one session there. That way, actually, they were talking about what are the things you can do and what are the types of bullying that you sometimes they don't know that they are getting bullied, right? So those types of discussions are very important among students.
I'd also like to just add the fact that the type of bullying that happens now has changed compared to what used to probably happen when we were younger, or previous generation was younger. Like, I think then it used to be more physical, or it was in the classroom, whereas now it's like more social media. So I think that kind of thing is very hard to sort of see as a pre-service teacher, because you're there for like 5 weeks. You can't really. So I think maybe there might be different strategies to deal with that, but I'm not too experienced with it.
I was just going to say that, like, for myself, I think just making sure that I'm someone who is approachable with the students, and so that, like, you know, if in a situation where they feel unsafe or they're being bullied, that they can come up to me and talk to me about that. I think that's probably like one of the most important things that I can do, at least for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, in my school, we had a guest speaker talk about bullying, and someone share about their own child who, lost their life to bullying, basically. And, you know, those kind of emotional stories as well, I think really helps to put students in perspective on whether they are bullies or being bullied. And, like, just having a guest speaker, I think, is also an effective way to talk about it, address it.
Yeah. So educating them. Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that wraps up everything we have to talk about today. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoy.